My name is Lieutenant Aaron Crowley, and for the past 11 years I've served as a Navy deep submergence specialist assigned to the Hadal Exploration Unit. My work has taken me to trenches most people will never see, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I experienced in the Challenger deep on the day everything went wrong. I can tell you the exact word count of this introduction. 37 words. I note it formally because that's what our expedition logs require, and because I want there to be no misunderstanding about what happened down there. Clarity is the only thing I have left. The dive began at 4.00 hours, well before dawn even thought about breaking over the Pacific. Our vessel, DSV Calypso, bobbed in the black water like a lone spark on an endless canvas. The sea was unnaturally calm, mirror-flat, as if holding its breath. That should have been an omen. I should have felt something in my gut. Instead, I was reviewing checklists, strapping into the submersible, and trying not to think about how many tons of ocean would soon be pressing in on the hull. The mission profile was simple. Descend to the Challenger deep, retrieve a malfunctioning sensor pod we deployed 3 weeks earlier, and return topside by late afternoon. A contained, single-day op routine by our standards. But the word routine doesn't carry much weight when you're plunging 7 miles straight down into a trench that swallows light whole. By 0 for 37, we were sealed inside the sub. My pilot for the mission, Chief Petty Officer Hale, gave me a small nod as he powered up the thrusters. He didn't talk much, but he didn't need to. We'd done 19 dives together, and our rhythm was practiced, reliable. He handled the controls. I monitored data. 2 people breathing in sync within a titanium sphere barely wider than a compact car. At 5.00 hours, we slipped beneath the surface. Water enveloped us instantly, cool and absolute. The world outside the viewport faded from gray to blue to ink black in less than 3 minutes. The surface ship's tethered lights vanished above us, swallowed by the collapsible shadows of the Hadal zone. The deeper we dropped, the more the hull groaned, a long metallic sigh that vibrated in my ribs. Pressure wasn't a force down here, it was a presence. 30 minutes into the descent, Hale muttered, "Depth, 6,000 meters. All systems nominal." I remember how steady his voice sounded. I remember thinking that it comforted me. At 8,000 meters, the lights outside illuminated only particles drifting like dust in a forgotten attic. No fish, no motion, no life, just the immense, unmoving void. My chest tightened. I forced myself to focus on the screen displaying the locator beacon from the missing sensor pod. For the first time since we'd started tracking it, the signal held steady. At 10,000 meters, we were well below any place the human body was meant to exist. Hale's jaw was working the way it did when he was calculating. Tiny shifts beneath the skin, micro-expressions he didn't know he made. I didn't comment, but it put me on edge. Everything about that descent felt wrong in a way I couldn't yet articulate. It wasn't turbulence, or equipment fluctuations, or any logical hazard. It was something else. A kind of expectation in the water. At 10,850 meters, just shy of the trench floor, the first anomaly hit us. A soft ping echoed through the cabin. Then another. Not our sonar. Not anything scheduled. Hale froze mid-movement and looked at me. "You hearing that?" I nodded. "It's coming from below." He frowned and checked the external sensors. No contacts. No terrain readout. Just empty. But the pings kept coming slow, rhythmic, almost like breathing. And they were getting closer. I leaned toward the viewport even though I knew I'd see nothing but the beam of our lights dissolving into black suspension. Could be an echo from the sensor pod. "No," he said quietly. "Pod signal is higher frequency. This is something else." The sub shuddered. Not violently, just a subtle tremor, like we'd brushed against a current. Only there are no currents at the trench floor. Nothing moves down here on its own except microscopic debris. But that vibration felt intentional, almost cautious, the way you'd prod something unfamiliar. Hale flicked a switch, boosting the light output by 20%. The abyss ahead brightened a little. That's when we saw it. A shape drifted across the edge of the beam. Not swimming, just present, suspended against gravity's expectation. Too smooth to be rock. Too large to be a fish. too slow to be mechanical debris. I only saw it for a second before it vanished again, but the impression it left behind clung to me like a cold film. What the hell was that? Hale whispered. I don't know. Give me more light. Already maxed. I tried to steady my breathing. Then rotate us. Starboard. He eased the controls. The sub rotated. Nothing but darkness. Nothing but the endless descent we'd surrendered to. But then another ping reverberated, closer, sharper, like whatever made it was directly beneath us now. My ears popped. A feeling I can only describe as being watched press down harder than the water ever could. Hale tapped the pressure readouts. Crowley, the hull stress just jumped. How high? Not catastrophic, but unusual. Like something's generating an external wave. That's impossible. Yeah, he muttered. That's what I thought. Then the locator beacon on my screen flickered. Once, twice, and shifted. Instead of registering the stationary position of the missing sensor pod, it began moving. Not erratically, smoothly, steadily, upward. As if something at the trench floor had lifted it and was rising toward us with unnerving deliberation. Hale looked at me, and for the first time in all our dives, I saw real fear cracking through his professional mask. Crowley, he said, something's coming up, and the pings became louder, so loud the hull vibrated like a struck bell. My stomach dropped. We weren't alone down there. Not anymore. The locator beacon kept rising toward us, climbing through the darkness with a smoothness that made no physical sense. For a moment I thought the depth gauge was malfunctioning, but the readings held steady. The pod wasn't drifting. It wasn't tumbling. Something was carrying it upward with absolute control, as if the crushing pressure of the trench didn't exist for it. The pings continued slow, steady pulses that vibrated through the sub's hull like a distant heartbeat. Hale adjusted the thrusters without speaking, his eyes tracking the motion on the sonar screen even though most of it was static from interference. Whatever was below us was too large or too unusual for our systems to interpret correctly. At 10,820 meters, the lost sensor pod finally slipped into view. Our floodlights caught it at an angle, metal gleaming clean, intact, no signs of scraping, corrosion, or biological growth. Things retrieved from the Hadal zone always bore scars. This looked like it had been polished. It hovered directly outside the viewport, then stopped. Perfectly, dead still. Not sinking, not rising, not rotating. Exactly positioned in front of us like it wanted to be seen. Hale swallowed. Crowley, nothing behaves like that down here. I know. I mean nothing. I said I know. I snapped, though my own pulse had begun to climb. The pod shifted, just a slow drift to the right, as if nudged by a hand we couldn't see. Hale didn't touch the controls. We both knew that. The silence inside the sub felt thick, sticky, pressing against the back of my throat. Then sonar registered a contact. Just one. Massive. Moving. Close. Hale's voice dropped to a whisper. It's right below us. Before either of us could brace, the sub lurched. Not a hit. Not an impact. More like a sudden downward pull, as if the water under us had been displaced by something enormous passing through it. I grabbed the safety rail, boots lifting off the floor for a half second while Hale fought the controls. The hull groaned under the sudden pressure shift. It's creating a wake, Hale said, wide-eyed. That's impossible at this depth. Well, he muttered through clenched teeth. Tell that to whatever's doing it. Another ping rolled through us, this one sharper, resonant, almost metallic. Not like sonar, more like a signal meant to be received. I checked the pressure readings. They'd spiked. Not dangerously, but enough to tell us this thing wasn't just moving nearby. It was affecting the entire water column around us. The sub rotated without Hale's input. Just a slow, deliberate turn, like something outside was guiding it, repositioning us to face something. That's when I saw the first glow. Faint, barely there. A soft shimmer far below, like light reflecting off a moving surface. It grew in slow increments, not rising quickly, but expanding, revealing itself little by little through the density of the abyss. At first I thought it was bioluminescence from some large squid, but the movement was wrong. Too smooth, too controlled, and too broad. The glow widened as if illuminating the top of something massive, smooth, and curved. Crowley, Hale murmured, "That's not an animal, not one we know." The glow brightened by degrees, washing the water beneath us in a dull, ghost-like haze. The scale of it started to register in my mind. Not a creature's body, not a swarm, not a geological feature. No, this was a structure, a surface, a shape too large to comprehend all at once. Something rose just enough for the sub's lights to hit the upper contours. A curve, another, then a ridge, smooth, seamless, like metal but organic. No sharp edges, no joints, just fluid geometry that made no sense in a biological or mechanical context. The instruments flickered violently, magnetic readings spiking, interference scrambling our panels. The hum from below deepened, vibrating in the restraints and running straight through my ribs. Pressure increased again. Steady, rhythmic, like we were being pulled toward it not by force, but by presence. Hale whispered, "This thing is bigger than a submarine." "That's not saying much. I mean bigger than a ship." The glow expanded further, and I felt the first flicker of vertigo. The curvature we were seeing wasn't the full body, it was a portion. A small portion. The rest faded into darkness in every direction. Whatever was below us wasn't rising anymore. It was waiting. The pings changed. Same tempo, but deeper. They resonated through the hull like tones meant for communication. The pattern wasn't random. Not sonar, not geological, not mechanical. A sequence. Repeating. Intentional. Hill shot me a look. "It wants a response." I didn't answer. Couldn't. The pressure shift eased. But the hum continued, vibrating into my bones like a question I didn't understand. Then something happened that nearly stopped my breathing. A shadow moved across the illuminated surface. Smooth, elongated, gliding with purpose. Not a fin, not a limb. Something that looked like a contour adjusting, folding, bending in ways nothing that size should move. The sensor pod outside our viewport drifted upward again. Just slightly, like a hand lifting a toy. Then it stopped dead. The shadow shifted again. This time it stopped directly beneath us. The hum deepened into a frequency I felt more than heard, rattling the air inside the sub. The lights flickered. Hale flinched away from the console as static arced across one of the screens. "Crowley, we need to ascend. Now." "Yes," I said quietly. "We do." He reached for the controls, and the sub didn't move. Thrusters powered. Readouts confirmed they were active. But we stayed exactly where we were, pinned in water that suddenly felt thick, immovable, held. Not by machinery, not by current, by intention. The glow below brightened one last time, washing the viewport in pale illumination, revealing that the surface beneath us wasn't a structure at all. It was an eye, a single, enormous eye, looking directly at us. Not hostile, not curious, something worse, recognizing. The moment recognition settled into that massive eye below us, the thrusters finally responded, barely. The sub shuddered upward a few centimeters, then stopped again as though the water had thickened to gel. Hale pushed the controls harder, jaw clenched so tight the muscles twitched. "Crowley, it's holding us," he said, voice thin. "It knows we're trying to leave." The eye didn't blink. It didn't need to. Its surface, smooth as polished obsidian, shifted with microscopic ripples, adjusting its focus with an intelligence that didn't belong 7 miles beneath the surface of the earth. Our lights reflected off it in long, distorted streaks, bending as if the curvature wasn't fixed but alive, constantly subtle in movement like the most delicate part of a living organism. The hum intensified. Not a threat, not a warning, an invitation, the kind that made my stomach pull tight. "Hale," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Try auxiliary thrusters. Low output. Minimum disturbance." He adjusted the controls. The sub groaned but didn't rise. Instead, the eye's glow shifted, like an aperture widening, though nothing physically changed. The water around us warmed by a fraction of a degree. Too subtle for comfort, too deliberate to ignore. Then, the sensor pod outside our viewport moved again. Not upward, toward us. A slow, gentle glide, controlled with more precision than any ROV could manage. It came so close the floodlights flared against its metal casing. The pod aligned with the window, matching our orientation exactly. Hale whispered, "It's showing it to us." I felt the same thing. Not a retrieval, not a threat, a demonstration, as if the thing below wanted us to understand it had taken the pod, examined it, returned it, and now expected some kind of reciprocal action. Something in my brain resisted the thought with all its strength. "We're leaving," I said, "even if we have to blow ballast." That finally snapped Hale out of his paralysis. He reached for the emergency ballast release. But the second his finger brushed the switch, the hum shifted to a deeper frequency, one that vibrated every surface inside the cabin, making tools rattle in their compartments and my molars ache. Hale jerked his hand back as if burned. "What was that?" he gasped. "A feedback. A warning." The eye dilated again, not physically but perceptually, like its focus tightened into a pinpoint aimed directly at us. The glow dimmed along the edges, leaving only the central core illuminated. A single, cold spotlight. Then the water darkened behind it. Movement. Not fast, worse. Measured. The kind of movement you see only from something that doesn't need to rush because it has all the advantage in the world. A shape unfolded behind the eye, vast, sinuous, and frighteningly smooth. A structure or appendage or something else entirely lifted in the gloom, silhouetted against our lights. Not a tentacle, not a fin. Something between limb and architecture, organic in shape but mechanical in motion. It didn't reach for us. It reached past us. The sub trembled again as the water displaced around the massive extension. Through the viewport, the beam of our lights struck only curves, endless, flowing curves, turning slowly like the wall of a living cathedral. And then, on the sonar, amidst the static, a faint secondary echo appeared. Smaller, unmoving, nearby. "Hale," I said softly. "Check that second contact." He adjusted the filters. The signal resolved, just barely, into a blunt outline. Human-sized, suspended maybe 15 meters off our port side. A diver. No suit registered. No equipment. No propulsion. And no human could survive this depth. But the shape was unmistakable. It hovered there, faint and gray, caught in the sonar field like a ghost trapped between sweeps. Hale stared at the monitor, color draining from his face. "Is that?" Before he could finish, the hum deepened again and the contact vanished. Not drifted, not moved, disappeared, as if the water swallowed it whole in an instant. "What the hell did we just see?" he whispered. I didn't answer, because answering meant acknowledging the absurd, that the thing beneath us wasn't just aware of our presence, but showing us things, communicating through imagery, movement, pressure shifts, and sound frequencies, as if testing us. The sensor pod tapped softly against the viewport. Just once. A gentle knock. Hale recoiled. "Crowley." "I know." Another knock. Slightly firmer, like a fingertip tapping glass. No motion outside. No visible force. The knocks weren't about the pod. They were about us. "Hale," I said quietly, "we need to drop ballast. Now." He hesitated only a fraction of a second before reaching for the switch again. This time, the hum didn't deepen. It lowered in pitch, a resonance that almost felt approving. "Do it," I said. He pulled the lever. The sub jerked as the release charges detonated. Ballast tanks emptied, and we shot upward with abrupt force. The eye below dimmed rapidly as distance grew, its glow shrinking to a pinprick. Still focused on us, watching, but no longer holding. The ascent was rough. Turbulence buffeted the sub like invisible currents were fighting to keep us close, but nothing stopped us. Depth markers ticked upward in rapid succession, 11,000 meters, 10,900, 10,700. As we rose, the hum faded, replaced by the creaking of the hull adjusting to decreasing pressure. Only when we passed 8,000 meters did Hale finally speak. "What was it?" My throat was dry. I forced the words out. Alive. But what kind of life? I don't think it's a matter of kind. He looked at me. You think it was intelligent? More than that, I said, pulse still racing. I think it recognized us. Not as intruders. Not even as prey. Hale swallowed. Then as what? The answer came to me in a cold rush I wish I hadn't understood. As something small, I said. Something it could examine. Something beneath its notice unless it chose otherwise. A silence filled the cabin, thick, suffocating. Our floodlights continued cutting upward through the dark water column, chasing the surface we were still hours away from reaching. Then Hale said the words I'd been trying not to think. Crowley. It let us go. I nodded slowly. Yes, it let us go, which meant it could have chosen not to, and nothing, absolutely nothing, prevented it from choosing differently next time. We rose for nearly 20 minutes before either of us spoke again. The sub creaked around us, settling into the new pressure gradient while the external lights carved a pale tunnel upward through water so dark it felt solid. The ascent should have calmed me. Didn't. Every meter we gained only sharpened the awareness that something unimaginably vast still lingered below, watching our departure the way a scientist watches a specimen scurry off a glass slide. Hale gripped the controls tightly, knuckles bone-white. Crowley. The thrusters are still sluggish. I checked the diagnostics. He was right. They were online, they were responsive, but they weren't giving us full power. No error codes. No malfunctions. Just diminished output, as if the water around us was resisting our movement. Not forcefully, reluctantly. A warning bell chimed from the aft systems panel. What now? Hale muttered, flipping the switch over the display. Magnetic interference. Strong. Localized. Moving. Hale's eyes shot to mine. It's following us. I didn't want to look at sonar again. I already knew what we wouldn't see. No clean outline, no readable form, just distorted static and the heavy, unnatural presence hiding inside those white noise spikes. Keep rising, I said. Don't change course. Don't increase speed. I wasn't planning to. The temperature alarms chirped, subtle but undeniable. External water temperature had risen by 0.5 degrees Celsius in the last minute. Too sudden. Too directed. Not the ocean. Not a thermal vent. Something else shadowed our ascent. Around 6,900 meters, the sub jolted as though struck by a sudden current from below. The lights flickered. Hale cursed, bracing one hand against the console as the sub rolled a few degrees off axis. Then it stabilized. But not because the thrusters corrected us. Something below had stopped pushing. Crowley, Hale said, voice shaking slightly. We're not alone up here either. Sonar showed nothing intelligible. Only the same broken distortions, pulsing slowly like a coded message. It's pacing us, I said. Why? We're leaving. That may be why. A long silence stretched between us, punctuated only by the hum of our systems. The ascent rate remained steady. The water around us remained black as pitch. Then something new appeared on sonar. Not a shape. Not a contact. A signal. 3 blips. Pause. 3 more. Exactly evenly spaced. Exactly matched to the interval of our own sonar sweeps. Hale breathed out slowly. It's mimicking us. It's answering, I said. No. No, machines answer. Animals react. This is intentional, I finished. Another triple blip. But this time the interval shifted. 3. Pause. 2. Pause. 1. A descending pattern. Hale's voice trembled. Crowley. That's counting. My skin prickled. Not from fear, no, this ran deeper than fear. This was the cold recognition of something old and intelligent and utterly beyond our understanding shaping its thoughts in the darkness around us. And directing those thoughts at us. At 5,800 meters, the sublights dimmed without warning. Only 10% illumination. Backup systems kicked in automatically, but the beams were thin, shallow, barely cutting through the water ahead. Reset them, Hale said. I can't. They're at full power. No, they're not. They are. Something's absorbing the output. The water ahead shimmered, just faintly, a distortion, as if the darkness wasn't empty but full of something denser than water. Something moving with us in perfect sync. Then a soft vibration passed through the hull. Not the deep hum, a gentler tone, short, almost like a whisper against the metal. Hale turned rigid. Crowley, did it just touch us? We don't know that, but we did. Something brushed the sub. Not a strike. More like someone running a finger along the outside of a glass jar to check what's inside. The lights flickered again, and for a fraction of a second, less than a blink, something appeared in the beam. A curve. Smooth, pale, fast, then gone. I grabbed the side rail, grounding myself. Hale, maintain ascent. He nodded, but his breathing was unsteady now. Too fast, edging toward panic. We couldn't afford panic. Not here. Listen to me, I said, steady but firm. Whatever this is, it's not attacking. If it wanted us at the trench floor, we'd still be there. That's not comforting. It's all we have. But I wasn't saying it to reassure him. I was saying it to keep myself from thinking about why something that large and aware would escort us upward instead of holding us in the dark. We reached 4,500 meters when the interference spiked suddenly, violently. Alarms flaring across multiple panels as navigation readings scrambled. Hale gripped the thrusters. It's accelerating. The magnetic distortion sweeping around us wasn't random anymore. It circled, not tightly, but with sweeping, deliberate arcs. A spiral, encircling us as we rose. Hale, I said. Look at the pattern. He froze. It's guiding us. No, it wasn't guiding us upward. It was guiding us sideways. A lateral pull. A subtle redirection. I checked our course trajectory. We were drifting off our ascent line. Not by much, but enough. No, I whispered. Keep us on course. Do not let it steer us. He forced the thrusters, pushing against the unseen pull. The sub protested, metal creaking under strain. The lights dimmed to nearly nothing, and in the darkness just beyond the viewport, a soft glow appeared. Not below, ahead, a faint, pale band of light, too straight, too narrow, too structured to be natural. It grew clearer as the distortion intensified. A crack, a seam of illumination floating horizontally in the water column. What is that? Hale breathed. It widened, just slightly, just enough to show it wasn't singular. It was one of several glowing slits arranged in a crescent shape stretching out beyond our lights. A shape I recognized far too late. Not a structure, not a formation, not a vent. A second eye. The creature hadn't stayed below. It had risen with us, matched our speed, and now it was directly in front of us, its enormous face emerging from the dark like a cliff awakening. Hale whispered, voice hollow. It didn't let us go, Crowley. The glow expanded further, revealing the faint curvature of another massive feature. It's escorting us. No, I said quietly, pulse pounding in my ears. It's studying us. The creature's glow pulsed once, soft and rhythmic. 3 blips, 2, 1, and then silence, complete, expectant, as if waiting to see how we would answer. The silence after that final pulse was worse than the hum, worse than the knocks, worse than the sight of its enormous face sliding into existence in front of our diminished lights. Silence meant attention. Silence meant expectation. Silence meant we had become the focus of something that lived where nothing should. The sub drifted upward a few more meters, inertia carrying us because the thrusters fought like they were pushing against a solid wall. Hale didn't touch the controls now, not because he'd frozen, but because we both understood that no part of this ascent belonged to us anymore. The second eye, the one ahead, remained perfectly motionless. Its glow was soft but pervasive, lighting the water in a pale halo that made everything feel suspended in time. I could see faint details around the edges of the creature's face, smooth curvatures sweeping outward into darkness, geometry too symmetrical to be geological but too enormous to fit into any familiar biological framework. Hale exhaled shakily. It's blocking our path. It's observing, I said. You don't know that. I know it hasn't crushed us. That's a low bar, Crowley. Down here it's the only bar. He swallowed hard, eyes flicking between the viewport and the scrambled sonar. The magnetic distortion remained high but stable, like a controlled field, not an attack. Whatever intelligence this thing had, it understood exactly how to manipulate its environment without destroying us. The eye blinked. It wasn't a normal blink. No eyelid. Just a soft ripple across the surface, like light passing over deep water. A shiver rippled up my spine. Then something else moved behind the glow. A contour, huge, sinuous, shifting with slow gravitational authority. It curved upward, coiling into our peripheral vision before disappearing into the dark. Not threatening, not lunging, just repositioning, like a creature adjusting its posture to study something tiny at its feet. And we were tiny. Hale whispered, "We need to respond." "I know. But how?" I stared at the sonar console. The triple pulses it had sent us earlier, 3, 2, 1, weren't random. They were a construct, a deliberate pattern, a message, if we were willing to call it that. What did it do immediately before sending that last sequence? I asked. "It matched our sonar pings," Hale said, "then shifted the rhythm. Right? It's listening, and it's reacting to what we broadcast." Hale stared at me. "You want to ping it? If it understands sonar patterns, we can reply in patterns. And if it takes that as provocation, we're already inside its field of influence. If it wanted us dead, we wouldn't be talking." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "What do you want to send?" "A simple sequence. Something non-threatening." "One ping," I said. "Just one." Hale reached to the manual sonar controls. His finger trembled when he pressed the button. The single ping broadcast outward. A crisp, clean burst echoing through the hull. The creature's eye brightened. Not dangerously, not aggressively, but with unmistakable recognition. A ripple spread across its surface. A subtle oscillation that made my chest tighten. It responded with 2 pings. Low, even, measured. Hale gasped. "It answered. Again," I said quietly. "Single ping." He tapped the control. Another sonar pulse left the sub. This time, the creature didn't immediately respond. Instead, the water around us tightened, literally compressed by a fraction of a degree, enough for my ears to pop and the hull to creak. Not harmful, but deliberate. Then, 3 pings, softer than before, almost encouraging. My heart hammered. It's waiting for us to continue the sequence. Hale swallowed. "So, 4. "No," I said slowly. "It went 2, then 3. It wants us to climb its pattern from the bottom. So we send one again." "Yes, repeat 1. He did. 1 ping. Silence. The eye dimmed, then flared softly as though pleased. Then it sent 4. A long, rising ladder of tones that resonated through my bones. My mouth went dry. Hale whispered, "Crowley, what the hell is it teaching us?" "It's not teaching," I said, but even as the words left me, I wasn't sure. "It's aligning." "To what?" "I don't know." The creature shifted again, slowly circling us with movements so massive they distorted the water column like planetary tides. Pressure fluctuations rolled through the sub in rhythmic waves. The creature's form, never fully outlined, revealed fleeting glimpses through the dim glow. Arching contours, layered structures, sweeping planes of surface that defied categorization. Not a whale, not a leviathan, not anything. Then something new happened. The water brightened around us. Not with the creature's glow, with reflection, because the creature had begun rising. Not below us, beside us, pacing our ascent. My stomach twisted. It was escorting us upward, guiding us, not pushing, not pulling, simply synchronizing its movement with ours. The thought alone made my skin crawl. Why accompany us? Why interact? What possible reason would something that size and intelligence have to follow a craft so microscopic by comparison? Hale's voice was thin. "Crowley, look at the depth." I checked. 3,200 meters. We'd risen almost 2,000 meters since encountering the second eye. And the creature had come with us every step. The water ahead began to lighten, not physically, but perceptually. A faint gradient, the first hint of depth where light from the upper ocean barely bled downward. We weren't close to the surface, but closer than anything that lived at the trench floor ever came. "It's ascending faster," Hale whispered. I saw it too. Depth readout, 2,900 meters, 2,850, 2,820. The creature was accelerating, bringing itself into waters no known life from the Hadal zone could survive, not from pressure but temperature, oxygenation, density. "Hale," I said, "check external plates. Temperature shift." He scanned the readings, then froze. "Crowley, the temperature around us isn't changing." I felt it immediately. It wasn't the ocean adapting to the creature. The creature was adapting to the ocean, rising, evolving its pressure field, matching the changing environment flawlessly. Hale's eyes widened with dawning horror. "Crowley, it's not bound to the deep." The glow brightened around us, pulsing softly. A beat, a breath, a signal. Before I could say a word, the creature released a pulse strong enough to rattle the cabin. Not sonar, not communication, a directional force. Upward. The sub rocketed. Depth readout spun like a wheel, 2,500 meters, 2,300, 2,000, hull alarm. Hale shouted, grabbing the controls though they did nothing. "Crowley!" I braced for implosion, but it never came. The pressure equalized around us in a way that defied physics, like we were being carried inside a stabilized bubble. The creature was lifting us, literally, carrying us toward the surface. Not as prey, not as threat, but for a reason far worse. It wanted something from us, something only found above. The ascent became violent in its speed, but impossibly gentle in its effect. That contradiction alone nearly broke my mind. At over 2,000 meters per minute, the sub should have buckled, crushed by pressure differential or torn apart by velocity shearing. Instead, every alarm that should have been screaming stayed dead, overridden by a constant field of impossible equilibrium. It was as if the creature had wrapped us in its own physics. But speed wasn't the part that terrified me. Purpose was. Hale kept one hand braced on the ceiling, the other gripping the useless thruster controls as though refusing to accept how little control he had left. "Crowley," he said, voice thin. "It's carrying us like we're nothing. We are nothing compared to it. That's not helping. It's the truth." Depth 1,800 meters, 1,600, 1,400. Each drop in number should have brought relief. Instead, my breathing grew shallow. This wasn't escape. This was extraction. The creature wanted us higher. For what? The water outside began to shift. Not brighten, not yet, but ripple with distortions like heat waves on asphalt. The creature's glow pulsed rhythmically, each pulse tightening that invisible field around us. Then, without warning, the ascent slowed. 1,300 meters. 1,290. 1,275. Pause. The sub steadied. Hale and I exchanged a look. "It stopped," he whispered. "No," I said softly, staring at the viewport. "It's positioning." Because the water before us was no longer empty. Shapes drifted into view. Not one, not two, dozens. No glow, no eyes, just silhouettes, floating motionless in the dark, suspended like dust in a beam of light. As the sub rose closer, their outlines sharpened. Human, all of them. My throat closed. They weren't alive. They weren't decomposed. They weren't distorted by pressure. They just hung there, limbs loose, hair drifting, suspended in perfect stillness like mannequins placed deliberately in formation. But they weren't mannequins. They were bodies. Hale's voice cracked. "Crowley, are those divers? No diver gets this deep without a suit. They look intact. Couldn't deny it. They did. Too intact. Faces slack but uninjured. Clothing unshredded. No signs of the rupturing or implosion that should have destroyed them at Hadal depths. "What is this?" Hale whispered, The question barely left his mouth when something happened that made my skin crawl so hard I thought it might peel. One of the bodies drifted sideways. Not rolled, not sank. Moved. Deliberately. It slid several inches, as if pushed by a gentle current. Except there was no current. Then another body shifted. Then another. They drifted slowly apart, separating, forming a loose ring around our ascending sub. A circle of the dead. Arranged. Displayed. I felt my pulse in my throat. Hale, do not touch the controls. Trust me. I'm not moving. The creature's glow flickered around us. Not brighter, but more focused. The bodies, illuminated by that soft, unnatural light, took on a pale sheen, as though the glow was scanning them too. Depth 1,250 meters. 1,240. 1,230. The bodies rose with us, not floating randomly, following. A synchronized ascent. Hale shook his head, voice barely a breath. Crowley, why are they moving with us? Why aren't they being left behind? I forced my mind to stay clinical. Because they're inside the field. Same as us. You're saying it's carrying them too? Yes. But why carry bodies? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know. Because I did know. It was showing us something. Demonstrating. Communicating. We weren't the first. The creature had interacted with humans before. Many times. And none of them returned to tell anyone. Their bodies were preserved. Held in the deep like a museum exhibit waiting for a new visitor. And now we were the new visitors. The sub lurched gently. The first sign our invisible stability bubble trembled. Not from failure. From intention. The creature was adjusting position again. Depth 1,200 meters. A body drifted closer to the viewport. A woman in a dark gray jumpsuit. Eyes open but lifeless. Hair suspended like seaweed. Hale let out a broken whisper. Jesus! She's untouched. I leaned close, scanning her face. No swelling. No hemorrhaging. No rupture. She looked asleep. Preserved. Crowley? Hale said suddenly. Look at her chest. I stared harder. At first I saw nothing. Then the light shifted. And I saw it. A faint indentation over her sternum. Perfectly circular. A shallow concave mark. Like something round had pressed into her with immense precision. Hale checked another body. Then another. Each one had the same mark. Perfectly centered. Perfectly identical. What is that? He asked. A contact point. For what? I swallowed hard. For where it held them. Hale recoiled. You're saying? Yes. The creature had touched every one of them. And left its mark. Depth 1,150 meters. 1,140. 1,130. The bodies began to drift downward now, gently loosening their circle, descending back into the dark like leaves falling in reverse. Not being dropped, released. Their purpose fulfilled. A demonstration completed. And now the creature's glow brightened again, no longer scanning the bodies, focusing on us. The water in front of the sub trembled, then parted slightly as if pushed aside by a massive unseen pressure. Something enormous moved closer. Not the eye. Something else. A structure rising in the glow's periphery. A shape so large it took several seconds for my mind to register its form. A limb, if you could call it that. Smooth, featureless, tapering into a bulb-like end. The same width as the sub. And at the center of that bulb, an indentation, perfectly circular, the same size as the marks on the bodies. Hale whispered, horrified, Crowley, it wants to touch the sub. No, not the sub. The creature drifted closer. The indentation aligned with the viewport, and the sub's hull vibrated with a sound that wasn't a hum, wasn't sonar, wasn't anything recognizable. It was anticipation. The limb, if that's even the right word, hovered inches from the viewport, its bulb-like end aligned with the glass so precisely it could have been guided by a machine. Except nothing about its movement was mechanical. It pulsed faintly, as if bored from within by slow, rhythmic contractions, and the indentation at its center seemed to tighten and relax in subtle micro-movements. Hale pressed himself back against his seat. Crowley, if that thing touches the hull, I know. We'll be next. Just like the others. I didn't respond. A lie would have been pointless. Truth would have been worse. The limb drifted closer. The indentation widened a millimeter, then contracted again, as if tasting pressure, gauging the shape of us. The glow from the creature's eye, further behind the limb, brightened slightly, illuminating the water in a pale halo that made the sub look impossibly fragile, a toy held between the fingers of something ancient. Maybe it's not lethal, Hale whispered. Maybe the others died some other way. Maybe it found them dead. Maybe. The limb shifted toward him, just a fraction, slow, intentional, like it recognized speech. Hale froze. Hale, I whispered. Don't move. Don't make sound. He clamped his jaw shut so tight I heard his teeth click. The creature responded instantly. The glow dimmed to half-strength. The limb relaxed. The indentation narrowed slightly, drawing back like a pupil adjusting to darkness. This thing understood sound. Not words, not meaning, but vibration, tone, rhythm. And it responded to difference. Calm quieted it. Panic drew it forward. Hale breathed through his nose, each inhale a trembling thread. The water shifted again as the creature's massive body repositioned. The pressure field remained stable. Still the only thing preventing our hull from imploding at the rate we were being carried upward, but its intensity changed. Tightened. We were being held more firmly. Depth 1,050 meters. 1,040. 1,025. Hale whispered, barely audible. What does it want from us? It's learning, I said. Learning what? Us. The limb inched closer. The bulb at its end rotated slightly, as if seeking an angle. Then it aligned itself even more perfectly with the viewport. Center to center, glass to indentation, eye to eye. A horrible clarity settled into my bones. It wants to make contact. The glow behind the limb pulsed twice. Then the pressure around the sub shifted, gentle, coaxing us forward. No, not forward. Toward it. Hale slapped the emergency override controls despite my warning. No. No, Crowley. I'm not letting it touch us. The sub juddered violently as thrusters fired at full thrust. They did nothing. The creature didn't even react. Then the limb froze in place. The glow behind it brightened sharply. A warning. Stop, I snapped. Hale, stop. He released the controls instantly, breath ragged. The thrusters cut out. The sub stabilized. The glow dimmed. The limb resumed its slow approach. Less than a foot from the glass now. The indentation unfurled slightly, not opening outward but deepening inward, like a living pressure socket designed to imprint, to press, to transfer something. Depth 1,000 meters. We had never been this high with it before. Maybe this was the threshold. Maybe this was the height at which the creature's biology changed. Or the environment no longer concealed whatever it meant to show us. The limb steadied. Everything around us went silent. Even the hum. Even the pressure fluctuations. A single moment of total stillness. Then, a soft knock. Not from our side. From outside. A sound that should be impossible underwater, much less at this depth. Hale gasped. Crowley, did you? Yes, I heard it. Another knock. Louder. Not aggressive. Assertive. A request. Hale's voice trembled. It wants permission. Or acknowledgement. How the hell do we acknowledge something like that? I stared at the sonar panel. The pattern it taught us earlier, one ping at a time, had been rudimentary communication. A test. The knock was another form. An evolution. If we didn't respond, would it assume rejection? Would it force contact? I touched the manual sonar trigger with a hand that didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. What are you doing? Hale whispered sharply. Answering, I said. One ping. Yes. Before he could argue, I tapped the control. The sonar emitted a single, clean pulse. The creature reacted instantly. The glow flared, lighting the water like a submerged moon. The pressure tightened around the sub. Not crushing, but gripping, holding us suspended in a perfectly still pocket of water. The limb pressed forward half an inch, then stopped, waiting, listening. I understood. It wasn't simply making contact. It was matching resonance, sharing information, like echolocation but reversed, imprinting rather than mapping. Hale grabbed my arm. Crowley, if it touches the hull, we don't know what happens. Those bodies, they were touched in the chest, I said quietly. Not their equipment, not a vessel. You think the sub protects us? No, I said. I think it doesn't know the difference yet. Hale's grip loosened. I pressed another ping. 1. The creature pulsed back. 2. I replied. 1. The creature advanced. An inch, maybe 2. The indentation now hovered less than an inch from the glass, faint ripples shimmering across its surface like a living membrane adjusting itself for contact. Crowley, Hale said, voice cracking. Don't let it touch us. I didn't intend to. I intended to stall. I hit one more ping. The creature responded, 3 this time. Not matching. Escalating. The glow darkened abruptly, shifting to a deeper tone. The limb drew in, preparing. Then, with a jolt so sudden I choked on my breath, the sub began rising again. Fast. Violent. The limb pulled away, vanishing into the dark below. The glow blinked out. Depth 950 meters. Hale shouted over the alarms. Crowley, what's happening? Took me several seconds to realize. It aborted contact. Why? Because something else changed. Something we hadn't noticed. The pressure field fluctuated violently, making the hull ring like a bell. The creature wasn't moving us anymore. Something else was pulling us upward. Something from above. And for the first time since we left the trench floor, I felt something new in the water around us. Turbulence. Chaotic. Uneven. Uncontrolled. Not the creature. Not precision. Not intent. Nature. Something natural was dragging us upward through its perfect field. Something the creature hadn't anticipated. We breached 800 meters. The sub trembled violently. Hale screamed, Crowley, we're losing the field. I saw it now, not with my eyes, but in the readings. Pressure stabilization was collapsing. We were transitioning from the creature's physics back into Earth's, and we weren't ready. The moment the creature's stabilizing field weakened, the ocean reminded us what it really was. Merciless, crushing, indifferent. Pressure slammed the hull in uneven pulses, the kind of chaotic fluctuation that deep-sea vessels were never meant to endure. The sub juddered so hard the lights overhead flickered, casting the cabin into a strobe of dim glow and darkness. Depth 700 meters, 680, 660. Too fast. Far, far too fast. Hale clutched the controls not to steer. He couldn't, but to anchor himself as the sub bucked like it had fallen into rapids. Crowley, the hull's screaming, we can't take this rate. I know. Do something. What? Tell the water to calm down. He didn't respond. Neither of us could think. The alarms blared in overlapping shrieks. Pressure variance, structural strain, thermal disparity, everything stacking against us. All because something natural, something unplanned, had surged into the creature's domain and torn us out of it. A current, a rogue upward thermal, a vortex, something the creature hadn't predicted or couldn't counter. Whatever it was dragging us away from the abyss, and away from the being that held us alive there. For a moment, I thought maybe this was salvation. The next jolt proved it wasn't. At 630 meters, the hull flexed with a sound I will never forget. Not a crack, a groan, the kind steel makes right before it starts to deform. Hale swore violently. Crowley, if we keep accelerating, the hull's gonna... I know. It was all I could say. No system in the sub was designed for this. Thrusters were meaningless. Ballast was gone. Stabilizers were offline. We were a tin can in a storm. And worst of all, the creature's glow had vanished completely. Hale pounded the console. Where is it? Where did it go? It didn't leave, I said, though I didn't know how I knew. It was forced back. Then it'll come after us, right? Right? I didn't answer, because what if it couldn't? What if its biology, its physics, depended on the extremes of the trench? What if this was the highest it could survive? What if the creature stopping contact wasn't a choice but a necessity? Depth 600 meters. 570. 540. The sub lurched upward, slamming me into my harness. Something metallic snapped behind the rear bulkhead, with a sound that made Hale's head whip around in panic. What was that? Something structural, I said. Internal frame. We're tearing apart. We're holding for now. For now. Another violent jolt threw sparks from the left instrumentation panel. Hale flinched, shielding his face as the lights dimmed to half-strength again. Then the worst alarm of all began to flash. Hull compromise, Zone C. Not a breach. Not yet. A warning of Micro's train pushing toward failure. My stomach twisted. Hale, brace. The sub jolted sideways as the current twisted, not upward now but spiral, yanking us into a rotational pull that sent loose tools flying inside the cabin like shrapnel. Hale shouted, ducking as a wrench ricocheted off the ceiling. The field flickered, just for a moment, a flicker of pressure equalization like something outside had tried to steady us, and failed. Hale gasped. Crowley, did you feel that? Yes. It's trying to reach us, or stabilize us. Then why can't it? I stared at the sonar. No glow, no shape, no distortion pattern, just violent static and the blind, meaningless chaos of the upper mesopelagic. Because this isn't its world, I said quietly. Another upward heave flung us so hard my vision blurred. Hale slammed the emergency restraints tighter. His breathing was fast, ragged, shallow, one step from hyperventilation. Depth 480 meters. 460. 440. Then, a tremor rolled through the sub. Not from outside. From inside the pressure field. The water brightened. Hale stared at the viewport, eyes wide enough to hurt. Crowley, look. Look. A glow. Weak. Flickering. Below us. Far below, hundreds of meters down, but unmistakable. The creature was rising. Struggling. Like a lantern dragged up a mountain too fast. Its light dimming, warping, pulsing with unstable effort. The water around the glow distorted as if the very medium resisted its presence. Oh my God, Hale whispered. It's dying. No, I said, pulse hammering. It's forcing itself to follow. That'll kill it. Then why does it keep coming? The question hung in the cabin like a weight. Why follow us? Why rise into waters hostile to its physics? Why risk weakening its atmospheric control field, the field that allowed us to survive its world? Depth 420 meters. 400. 380. Suddenly the current shifted, like something enormous had disrupted it far below. The sub stopped spinning. The upward acceleration dropped sharply. The hull stopped screaming. The creature was pushing against the current. It was trying to stabilize us again. Crowley, it's saving us. I swallowed hard. Or retrieving us. The glow surged, briefly roaring brighter, then dimmed again, as if straining just to remain coherent. Depth 350 meters. 330. 310. Too shallow for it. Far too shallow. Its light guttered, like a candle in wind. Then the pressure field flickered. But this time it wasn't collapsing. It was reforming, reconfiguring, adapting upward. Hale whispered, "How powerful is this thing?" I couldn't answer, because a new sound filled the cabin. Not sonar, not hum, not knocking. A low, wavering resonance that vibrated the air itself, not just the hull. Something the creature had never done before. A distress signal. Or a call. Or both. The creature pulsed once, weakly now. Depth 290 meters. 280. 270. Then, everything stopped. The sub hung motionless in the water. No current. No turbulence. No ascent. Just stillness. Unnatural stillness. The glow below flickered once, twice, then went out. Completely. Hale's voice cracked. Crowley, Did it die? I didn't answer, because I was staring at the pressure gauge. For the first time since the ascent began, the pressure reading was changing in a controlled, deliberate pattern. Not natural, not environmental. Something was shaping the water around us again. But not the creature. Something else. Above. A shadow passed over the viewport. Huge, flat, metallic. The darkness broke with a mechanical thud. Something had latched onto the sub. With claws. The metallic clamping sound reverberated through the hull, sharp, decisive, mechanical. Not organic. Not the creature. Hale jerked upright, eyes snapping toward the ceiling as if he could see through the several inches of reinforced plating. That wasn't the ocean. That wasn't the abyss. Something human-made had grabbed us. Another clamp engaged on the port side, then a third on starboard. The sub stopped drifting entirely, held in a rigid vice. My stomach tightened. We weren't rising anymore, but we also weren't sinking. We were pinned, contained, by something large enough to hold a Navy submersible like a caught insect. For a moment, neither of us said anything. We just listened to the faint hum of machinery outside. Machinery, after everything we'd seen. After the trench, the creature, the bodies suspended like forgotten specimens. That sound alone nearly broke my composure. Hale spoke first, voice trembling. "Crowley, who the hell is out here?" Before I could answer, a spotlight blazed through the viewport, white and harsh and unmistakably artificial. It cut through the water with perfect coherence. No flicker, no distortion, illuminating our sub like we were being inspected. Then a second beam. The third. The water around us glowed like a stage. "Surface team," Hale whispered. "No," I said quickly. "We're too deep for manned divers. And too early for retrieval." "Then who?" I didn't get a chance to form a theory. A metallic shriek echoed overhead. The clamps tightened just enough to make the hull groan. The sub jerked upward a few meters. Clean, powerful, controlled. We were being lifted. Hale's breathing quickened. "They're hauling us up. They're hauling us up." He said it like a prayer. I didn't feel saved. Not yet. Depth 260 meters. 250. 240. The ascent was smooth, not like the chaotic pull from the current, not like the creature's gravitational field, but mechanical precision. Industrial strength. This was not a rescue craft sent in a hurry. This was a system built for retrieval. A deep-sea winch? A covert ocean floor station? Some classified structure no one briefed us about? Hale wiped sweat from his forehead with a shaking hand. "Crowley, if this is Navy." "It's not Navy." "How can you be sure?" "Because Navy retrieval protocols don't involve hiding at 300 meters for no reason." He swallowed hard. The lights outside flickered as we passed 220 meters. The water trembled with a faint vibration, something massive powering up above us. The clamps adjusted, pivoting our entire sub like aligning a tool into a socket. Something about this movement chilled me more deeply than anything in the trench. It wasn't unguided. It wasn't cautious. It was routine, as if whatever was grabbing us had done it countless times. "Crowley," Hale whispered. What if this thing is here because of the creature?" I stared at the shadows overhead, at the enormous outline slowly coming into view through the water. And for the first time since the dive began, I felt my pulse stop. A structure emerged. White, flat, metallic. No, too smooth for steel plating, too seamless for any known engineering. The clamps carried us upward toward its underside, where a rectangular opening, dark and precise, began to iris open. Hale choked on his breath. "Crowley, we're being taken inside." The sub rotated again, matching the alignment of the opening. Not captured. Docked. "What is this?" Hale whispered. "I don't know," I said. "But it's not ours." The iris aperture widened fully. Darkness yawned above us, deep and silent. Thick mechanical arms extended, guiding us in. Depth 200 meters. 185. 170. Then a pulse shot through the water. A pressure wave so sudden, so violent. The entire sub shuddered like it had been slapped by a god. The clamps tightened instantly to stabilize us. The wave wasn't from above. Came from below. Hale's eyes widened as he looked at the depth readout. Then the sonar. The glow had returned. Weak, fading, but rising. The creature was still alive, and it was coming toward us. Hale whispered, horrified, "It's trying to reach us." No. The glow pulsed once, then again, then dimmed. Not toward us, toward the structure. "Hale," I said slowly. "It wasn't trying to save us from the current." He turned to me, pale. "Then what?" "It was trying to keep us from this." The structure above us emitted a low-toned mechanical rumble, almost like a response. The clamps drew us deeper into the opening, out of the open ocean. The light from outside narrowed to a thin line, then sealed shut behind us like the mouth of an enormous machine. Darkness swallowed the sub. Fans whirred. Hydraulic locks engaged. Air, not water, began cycling in the chamber around us. Hale couldn't take it anymore. "Crowley, where the hell are we?" A soft thud answered him as we settled onto a platform. Then silence again, until a loud metallic hiss. Something was pressurizing the chamber. Then the worst sound of all, footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps approaching from outside the hull, echoing in the docking bay. Not mechanical, not the creature. Human, or human-shaped. Hale whispered, "Crowley, we're not supposed to be here." "No," I murmured, heart pounding against my ribs. "We were never supposed to surface here." The footsteps stopped right outside the sub's main hatch. A moment of total stillness. Then, a knock. Not like the creature's. Not fluid. Not resonant. A crisp, precise rap of knuckles on metal. 3 knocks. Then silence. Then a man's voice, calm, steady, practiced, spoke through the hull. "Lieutenant Crowley, Chief Hale, you survived longer than the others." Hale's blood drained from his face. "Crowley, how does he know our names?" The voice continued, "Open the hatch. We have a great deal to discuss before it arrives." Before it arrives. My breath caught. He wasn't talking about the creature. He was talking about something worse. Something coming here. Hale looked at me, shaking. "What do we do?" The man outside the hatch knocked once more. A single, patient knock. Waiting. Expecting. I unlatched my harness. And regretted everything that led us here.